Well, welcome to another episode of Leadership and Lattes. Bill Montgomery, and I'm here with my friend Clark Kellogg. Clark, thanks so much for coming out today.
Oh, pleasure, Bill. Always good to hang out with you, man. You know that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know, and you're thinking, I've seen this Clark Kellogg guy before. If you've watched some March Madness or you've watched some college basketball, he's been a staple on CBS for many years. Does an excellent job, and then at the games doing the commentary, and then is in the studio for March Madness. How long have you been doing that?
Man, I started full-time at CBS in '97, but I got my broadcasting start with the Indiana Pacers back in '87 on radio. Did TV for the Pacers for 20 plus years in addition to college work at ESPN. So I've been at it since the late '80s. So Ooh. I'm closing in on 40 years of being behind the microphone in some form or fashion. CBS since '97. So this will be my 28th Final Four coming up.
Yeah. And if you are an NBA fan, people probably know you are the voice of EA's NBA 2K.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's 2K Sports.
2K Sports.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you. Oh,
yes.
My apologies to 2K Sports.
No worries.
2K Sports NBA, and you do the color commentary.
Yeah, I'm one of many commentators. My colleague at CBS, Kevin Harlan, is a primary play-by-play voice, but a ton of different analysts that you would recognize and play-by-play voices you would recognize. Brian Anderson, who works for Turner as well, Coach Fratello, Steve Smith. We've got a stable of tremendous analysts that are part of that phenomenal video game franchise. And I've been doing that since 2009. So this was my 16th year as one of the primary commentators. And it's connected me to the younger generation in a pretty cool and unexpected way. I mean, there are a lot of folks, obviously, that aren't old enough to have seen me play in college or the NBA the short time that I did, but there are a bunch of folks that are enthralled with that video game and recognize my voice, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, a lot of folks probably don't realize, because they see you in these public things, that you've actually done a lot of speaking, you've done a lot of mentoring of younger people. I know that you did that inside the Pacers organization.
Yep.
And that's why I think this is a perfect fit for this podcast, just talking about leadership. Yeah. And what I'd love to get is just a characteristic or a leadership trait that you find important just in life in general, whether you're a young person and looking up, or whether you're an older person and you're just trying to develop that skill.
Yeah, there's so many different branches on that leadership tree. I mean, I think about it first and foremost as influence. Leadership is influence. Whether you're a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, an executive at a company, employee, it crosses all spectrums of roles that we all have a sphere of influence. So I kind of look at leadership as influence. There's a friend of mine, Jim Morris, the late president of the Indiana Pacers. He was an executive. He ran the World Food Bank for a while. Just a phenomenal guy, recently passed in July, but he talked about leadership from an influence standpoint. What influence are you bringing to bear for good on those in your circle? So I first think of it as influence. The characteristics that comprise good leadership to me are many, and it's hard for me not to think of the fruit of the Spirit in terms of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that last one is a key one, the self-control element. I think of leading yourself well first as perhaps a significant characteristic, self-control, self-management. And there are a lot of things that go into that. Are you constantly growing? Are you curious? Are you a lifelong learner? Are you willing to be uncomfortable in settings so that you can learn? So I think leading yourself is one. I mean, that's not a characteristic, but it's an attitude and a disposition. Probably for me, the most important characteristic that if I had to just pick one would probably be humility in all of its dimensions. I mean, there's so many layers to humility, but it's first and foremost a recognition that you need other people. That to me is the foundational component of humility, recognizing that you don't have the answers all of them, and that you need other people. I read a book called People Fuel by a noted Christian psychologist, John Townsend. Oh. He works with tons of executives and talks about leadership. But one of the things that he laid out foundationally in this book, People Fuel, is that you need to need. And he was basically targeting executives at the highest level that oftentimes can be in charge of huge projects or companies and multiple people, but all of us need to need. In other words, we have to recognize that we need other people in relationship. Even when we're in a position of leadership, we still need some of the things that only other people can give us. So that's why I hearken back to humility, recognizing that I need other people and what they can provide to me, not just in functional and tactical stuff, but in relational stuff. Fuel for my soul and my psyche. And that sometimes gets overlooked because we're so wired to be about doing as opposed, and being recognizing that you need other people is being vulnerable.
Yes.
Acknowledging that I need what you can give me. And then we have to learn how to try to get that in our relationships in a mutually beneficial way. But I think humility, and then realizing that not only do you need other people, but good suggestions and ideas can come from a lot of different places. And you have to be open to that. You have to put yourself in the path of that. You have to have a level of confidence, but humility is about realizing that you have some attributes and abilities God has given you, but you benefit from what other folks can give you too. So that to me would probably be the one foundational characteristics, a real grounding in humility.
I love that. It's interesting because humility, is one of those things that, as we think about leadership publicly, is often hard to see. It's interesting. I was watching an NFL game yesterday, and as happens in the heat of the battle, two teammates from the same team.
Yes, I saw the Seattle.
Yes, the Seattle game.
Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and what I loved is that after that cooled down, you could see that the younger player humbled himself, was listening, because all of that takes place in the public stage.
Yeah, well, that's a great example. I mean, that's a really good practical example. Intensity, passion, discord, a little friction in the heat of competition, and yet a sense of recognizing that we're trying to help each other, and then being able to dial it down and then get to a place where you have some kind of agreement and recognition that this can be a positive thing for us. But it does require give and take. Humility is about give and take. Receiving what you need to receive, and then giving what you need to give, and then being able to reciprocate that and have that circle be part of how you function and operate. You're not always going to agree, and we have to relinquish our desire or our need to be right. That's another element of humility to me, is that I have to surrender my need to be right in some circumstances. Actually, in a lot of them, sometimes it's more important to be connected and to be in dialogue and conversation and moving in the same direction than to make the point that you were right.
Yeah. I think I heard this first. I don't know if it was original with him. I think I heard it first from a sports commentator, Colin Cowherd.
Okay, yeah.
And he made the comment, do you want to be right or do you want to get it right? Talk about just the difference.
That is semantics, but it is, man. That's right. I often, and I love Colin Cowherd, by the way. He's enjoyable to listen to, always extremely well prepared and thoughtful and engaging. But I look at it maybe a slightly different way. Do you want to be right or do right?
Oh.
Is it more important to appear right or to be doing what's right? Yeah. And it's much the same. I mean, those are branches on the same tree. The difference, and again, I think it just goes back to humility, right? If you want to be right, then you're trying to elevate yourself. I mean, if you strip it away, that's basically you're trying to put yourself up. And people will lift you up, and you have to be able to properly receive that. You don't clamor for that.
Right.
That to me is part of humility too. The Bible talks about thinking of yourself with sober judgment, to not think of yourself more lowly than you should or more highly than you should. So it's a balancing act. And I think that too is part of humility. And that's part of the conundrum of being right and doing right, or being right and wanting to get it right.
Yes.
Same type of thing.
Being a leader means celebrating the people who make it all happen. Dolce Sweets makes it easy with handcrafted chocolates and nostalgic candies that inspire connection and frankly make people feel loved and cared for. Right now, Leadership and Lattes listeners get 20% off a trio bundle, perfect for showing appreciation or enjoying yourself. Use the code BILL20 at dolcesweets.com to claim your special discount today. It's Dolce, D-U-L-C-I, Sweets, the finest chocolate you have ever had.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because a lot of times we attribute ego with leadership.
Yeah.
And ego isn't inherently bad
That's
or
correct.
good. It just is, but how we handle
Yes, well
a big
said.
part of it.
No question. And again, I think it hunts back to humility. What is your identity tied to? What is your purpose and your role within your leadership sphere as a dad? As much as, as a dad, the Bible talks about not exacerbating or frustrating your children. You have a role of authority, a position of authority. You have a position of authority with your spouse, but you're to engender respect so that submission comes as a natural outpouring. And that requires a level of humility, surrendering some of the things that may come with your role. When you're in a position of leadership, you have a title, you have a level of stature and influence. Well, I think whenever you have great stature, you even have to be more mindful of humility and self-control, because you've been pastors, teachers, they're held to a higher standard according to the scripture.
Yes.
Because they've been entrusted with more. So when you're in those positions, then you too are called to be much more mindful of humility and self-control and your need for other people. Clearly, there's some things that you have to decide on your own when you're in a position of leadership, as a husband, father, running a radio station, whatever it might be.
Right.
But then there's still that requirement and expectation that you recognize you need other people to be your best. And that's a really foundational component of humility. And I would add, it's a work in progress. You don't ever get it fully. You get it in segments and pieces, and hopefully you're always on that path to keeping that on the front burner of how you go about your work.
Yeah, humility's probably not a destination.
No, that's well said. It's not. No, it's a journey. It's a journey. Yeah, it is a journey for sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, and I'm thinking too, as leaders, if we are modeling things for people, it comes out in our actions. So things like asking forgiveness or saying I was wrong are critical in a leadership of showing humility. Those are the ways we actively demonstrate that, I think.
Yeah, I think modeling those attributes and qualities are just as important as espousing them. Actually, even more important. You want your walk and your talk to be in alignment. And so people sometimes may not hear what we say as much as they see what we do and see how we do it. Not just what we do, but how do we do it? How do we handle the role and mantle of our position of leadership? And it's not just, to me, leadership isn't just a position, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to be promoting the best of yourself for the good of others. And if we can consistently try to do that, then I think, one, as a follower of God through Christ, it makes God smile and it reflects who he is in our places of influence and interaction. And I'm always thinking about that, and all that is on my plate or all that's in my sphere is God-given, and how am I handling that in a way that reflects who he is and who I've come to know him as through Scripture.
Yeah. One aspect of humility that I think the relationship to it doesn't change, but maybe the way we demonstrate it does. You know, in the last, I don't know how long, decade, maybe a little bit longer with the advent of social media.
Yeah.
And then in times that have been, a little more fraught with conflict or disagreement, you see people portray themselves very differently when they're behind the keyboard or behind, when they're typing.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about your role of showing your humility as a leader, even in disagreement.
Well, I think humility, one of the other sides of that coin is authenticity.
Yes.
Being true to who you are in every setting. That you don't take on a different persona or a different posture just because the environment is different. That you're consistently demonstrating the same personality traits, whether you're in a small setting, a large setting, whether you're public or private. And that's an element of humility that resonates powerfully with me. I'm in the public eye quite a bit through what I've done as a former basketball player and what I do now as a commentator. And I'm most thankful when people encounter me and they say that you're exactly the way you appear on television. And that's a real compliment. And people that have spent time with me at my house or any other setting, they know that I'm not any different. I mean, the way I watch games, the way I talk to people, the way I treat my wife and my kids. I mean, if you caught me at home, it would be consistent. And I think that's a dimension of authenticity is a dimension of humility. It's a level of comfort with who you are and recognizing that consistency in who you are is important in leadership. You can't fluctuate. That can't have a wide range of disparity because it limits your effectiveness. It dilutes it a bit.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, like when you're doing a game or if you do some commentary online or whatever, you don't want to have to worry, I'm going to run into this coach, I'm going to run into this player.
There's a number of guardrails that are out there. Yeah, they're clearly, and that's for the benefit of, that's self-interest, clearly, which is a part of humility, but also it's just the right way to go about your responsibility and role. I'm a guardian of the game. In my role as a commentator.
Yes.
I'm a guardian of the game. I mean, I've played it. It's given me more than I can ever give it as far as what basketball has meant to me and for me. So I take that stewardship role seriously. And relationships are important. And you can disagree, but how you do so is really, I think, at the core of it. Yeah, having a level of humility that you can, I may not understand your position, but I'm open to hearing why you got to your position.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. And it doesn't mean I have to condemn you because it's different than mine. We can still coexist and move forward. If everybody was the same, it would be a pretty boring place, the world. So,
I think that's a great thought to leave on, just of how we cultivate humility in our own life, is just even our posture of listening and our posture of disagreeing without being disagreeable.
And learning, being curious.
Yeah, because we might change our mind.
Yes, being open to the fact that how you've been raised or your paradigm or your perspective, while you feel tethered to it and passionate about it, there might be a chink in it. There might be some other way to look at it, and hearing from different perspectives in accord with a desire not to be right, but to learn and to grow. And that's a posture of humility as well.
Oh, that's so good. Clark, thanks for taking some time.
Oh, man,
I appreciate
pleasure, man.
that. It's
Great.
an absolute pleasure chopping it up with you.
Yes, indeed.
Conversation.
Always. Yeah, thank you.
And
thank you,
we look forward to seeing you on television here very soon.
That one-way box will keep me in front of a lot of people, Bill. I'll be there. I will be there.
Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.